Hi, everyone. I'm just fixing my settings so that everyone can see here. Okay. Let's get into full screen. So I hope everyone can see me and everyone can hear me as well. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Welcome to our session. And it's just gone on 5:30. People are still trickling in. So we will obviously give them a few seconds. But yeah, we will cover a little bit of ground before we do that. I hope everyone has been onboarded on the server. Since last session, we've been getting people on board to the Etisalat VM, where they can work hands-on with the system. So we don't need to use the trial version of ThingWorx anymore or install it locally. We can just all log on to that, and it's a great resource for getting set quickly. I see a few more people have entered in, so I'm just going to wait till they get in. In case you haven't got the login details, in case you hadn't RSVP'd and got the login details, you can please reach out to Amar, who's the co-host on chat, and he will provide you with temporary credentials that you can use in this session. We won't get into using the system straight away, but yeah, it's better if you get set for that. We'll be working hands-on with this, so it's not a very long, very long session for the hands-on part. We are going to focus more on the use case rather than like doing too much with what we've got, because obviously time is limited. I'd say last time, if you were here for the last workshop, you would have seen we did something quite specialized then, where we worked with analytics and machine learning. This time it's going to be a lot more gentle. We're only going to build a simple use case, and we're going to just build a simple mashup, and we're going to model the data according to what we have. But we are going to focus, like I said, more on the use case for this. So let me get back to sharing my screen as well. Okay. I hope everyone can see clearly here. Okay, so now where is my PowerPoint slideshow? Okay, so welcome to the session. Also, please do note we are powered by FutureNow. Etisalat Digital. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a bit. I'm just going to get into first, of course, about the assembly. You would have already seen the intro and seen some of the things that we've been doing. This is just a text summary of that. We are a smart lab and makerspace based out of Infive in Dubai Knowledge Park since 2014. And we've been doing a lot of free workshops for the community related to exponential technology. So we count over 300. I mean, that number is probably closer to 400 now, but we've been doing them continuously. So every week we maintain, and it's not just these Etisalat workshops that we try to do once a month, which we're now trying to increase to twice a month. We do all sorts of workshops that work with open source technologies, anything that is of interest to the community. So assembly hack workshops would relate to IoT and hardware. When we were doing live sessions, we'd provide you with the hardware. So you wouldn't need to bring your own hardware, your Raspberry Pis, Arduinos, etc. We'd provide those with you, and we'd show you how to make circuits. All the components would be provided, and you would work in teams on that. We've done a few similarly. Of course, it's not the same when you're doing it online. So we focused a little bit more online with assembly code workshops, which focus on software, specifically APIs, and we try to stay out of the ordinary. So we go with frameworks and apps. So not just vanilla coding. We try to do something where we can show you something new that will be practically applicable to you. We've also separated out assembly data science, which relates to machine learning. So we have a lot of topics on that. So that's why we thought maybe it's better to have a separate stream for that. Our audience ranges from students to professionals to entrepreneurs. We are in an entrepreneurship hub, so we get a lot of entrepreneurs. Of course, we are affiliated with Etisalat's FutureNow program, which is also targeted at entrepreneurs amongst other people. It is the open innovation program. We focus on smart technology and practical applications. So smart technology, it could relate to IoT, it could relate to 3D printing, it could relate to robotics, anything that is new and upcoming and can be of useful, can make your life easier. And we try to focus on the practical side of it. So we don't want to just give you the theory. We want you to build something actually with it. You can follow us on social media. You'll find us on all social media at Make Smart Things. So whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, you'll find us there as Make Smart Things. One more thing to note, please, that we have our own forum, members.theassembly.ae. You can find a lot of details on there. I'm actually going to share my browser as well. I think I've only shared my screen, so I'm just going to share my whole screen because I wanted to show you some of the parts on our site. I'm just going to click through. Okay, since I'm already doing a few things, it's a little slow. So this is our site, and the workshop will be there under live, but you can also see all our past workshops under online workshops, including the assembly workshops that we have. The Etisalat workshops that we've done in the past. These are the workshops that we do on a week-by-week basis, all different topics, as you can see. We are on YouTube also, so you can definitely see. In fact, the Etisalat IoT workshops, there's a separate playlist for that. I am going to just actually pop this in the chat also in case you people want to see that. This is the playlist that has all the Etisalat workshops. The last one we did, it's missing one. You can find the analytics workshop. It's not in the playlist, but it's there. So the analytics workshop, that we did last time, which was related to machine learning, is there. But we've done previous analytics workshops also, and you can also see some things that will be reliant on, like if you see connect edge devices, that's a key part. We're not going to be retreading that ground here, but we will be showing you how it works. So I just wanted to go back to that. I'm just going to go back to the presentation. So that's a little bit about the assembly. While I've got you here, I did also want to show you a little bit more about FutureNow and Etisalat. So this is FutureNow. The website has just undergone a new phase here. So it's just had an overhaul. So if you have visited before, please do again. There's a lot more content there. Now, FutureNow is Etisalat's open innovation program, and FutureNow covers a lot of topics. IoT is just one vertical, and FutureNow, it works with a number of startups. It's a different way of working on innovation. And you'll see something called FutureNow calls, in fact, which has been which are challenges that Etisalat has put out to startups to work with things. And on the topic that we have today, they in fact also ran a digital health and wellness challenge, which was in the dates. So startups from around the world have applied for that to do things with, of course, IoT-based startups will work with that as well as others. So you can have a lot more, you can see a lot more on there. You can see the IoT programs that Etisalat runs also. So if you have an IoT solution or are interested, you can definitely reach out to Etisalat. Drop us a line. We'd be happy to connect you as well. So we do work quite closely with Etisalat on a number of different things, and you can see some details there. So another thing about Etisalat, the reason we are using ThingWorx. So Etisalat has a partnership with PTC. PTC is a company that owns ThingWorx. ThingWorx is one of the leading platforms, if not the leading platform for IoT. It's a unified platform that is being used by many companies, and you're going to see the footprint when it relates to, of course, to medical. But PTC has a lot of different, reach when it comes to IoT, and ThingWorx is their platform of choice. Etisalat uses it in a multi-tenanted way, and we've discussed this in the past, also in past workshops. it's very versatile and it can do a lot. So please do have a look, revise about ThingWorx. Also, if you've not seen our workshops before, have a look at the previous ones. You'll get a lot more information regarding these sessions also, and regarding what you can do. There is a whole, in fact, I think ThingWorx has its own, PTC universities also there where you can learn. It's a paid course, the paid courses that they have, because there's such a demand for skills relating to ThingWorx. Of course, we are doing them as free sessions here to give you an insight into them, but you can also see developer.thingworx, where they have a lot of info with that. So ThingWorx is owned by PTC. PTC also, by the way, owns Vuforia, which is the augmented reality engine. And we've done a workshop previously to show you how they can be combined. So you can definitely have a look at that. Okay, so before we get into anything else, I'm just going to check it's ThingWorx with an X. Okay, and you'll see a bit more on that. So I'm just going to mention, what we're going to be doing next. Sorry, I'm going to just check back the chats once in a while. I won't be looking at them continuously, but I will post things. Feel free to reach out to Amar, who is on there. Amar will help you with anything related to the technical part. Amar is the co-host, so Amar Ali, you can see him there, and you can he will respond to any issues with that. If you have problems connecting to the platform, he'll definitely get you sorted on that. So this is our next session. So as I mentioned, we want to increase the frequency of the workshops. So now we're doing one in the middle of September. We will do another one by the end of September. And the date we fixed is September 29th. We'll be announcing that very soon. Now this workshop will be a little bit more specialized than today's. We're going to be working with a very, very important part of PTC. In fact, it's almost a separate company in itself. But it's a platform that works called Kepware. So in the past, we've always shown you how to do simple one-to-one connections with edge devices. So we've shown you how you can connect edge devices using the edge microserver. If you had a Raspberry Pi, we'd install the edge microserver. It would do simple communications, but it would be quite effective. You could communicate with the REST API. But when it comes to industrial IoT, you need a robust solution. You need something that can scale, that will be secure. And for that, in particular, PTC has provided ThingWorx Kepware. So ThingWorx Kepware is a server that pools connections, and it keeps bandwidth requirements minimums, and it out of the box supports things like MQTT. So it is great for working in industrial scenarios where you have lots of different devices, lots of things being added. So Kepware is a very advanced one. We were waiting to do this Kepware workshop because we didn't have the facility, but we have now just installed it on our online server also. So you will have access to Kepware as well, and we'll show you how industrial connectivity works. So this is how people who work in the industry, specifically in the day-to-day, would relate to this. So apart from all the online platform, you'll definitely see how to do that. So this is going to be our next session. Same thing, it's on a Wednesday, but just mark the date, 29th. We will send out the invite, and you'll have to RSVP again there. You can use like the same login details for the online VM that you have for there. Okay, so now let's get into the matter at hand. The Internet of Medical Things. Now, the Internet of Medical Things, we've already mentioned. And the Internet of Medical Things is a subset of IoT, but it's a very, very large subset. You can see it relates to a number of things. It includes devices, it includes systems, it includes data from legacy systems also, and it also combines all the stakeholders. So it's not just the doctors and the patients, it's also the technicians in between who service your machines if something goes wrong, and it's also the administrators and regulators at a higher level. So by regulators, I mean even your government authorities are involved in that. So in the USA, of course, that's the FDA. Locally also, there are a lot of specs. When it comes to IoMT, especially related to security, you'll find documents from the DOH also, the Department of Health, relating to IoMT and what are the prerequisites. So it's something that you have to do with a little bit of care. You can't just, say if you were working with IoT in another field, you could just incorporate and just, there's not that much compliance requirement. With IoMT, there has to be compliance. So it's very important you use a system. And actually, ThingWorx makes it easier because it is an established system. And it is a system where you can segregate data and you can control permissions. Obviously, privacy of data is a very important thing. In the US, you have HIPAA rights, which are important that you want to maintain, patient records. EMTs have to be segregated from, say, your details of your machines. So it is very important. That said, there's a lot that comes up. So just the normal definition, of course, is the Internet of Medical Things is the smart connected infrastructure of medical devices, software applications, which would be running off the cloud, and existing health systems and services that can plug in. So you are just basically bringing together lots of diverse type of data. Why is it important from a practical point of view, from a developer's point of view? The IoMT market is growing in leaps and bounds. So I think what they estimate at 2018, they're expecting a 500% increase by 2026. Deloitte has estimated, and you can actually find there's a nice article there, and I'll share that also a bit later on. So which contains a lot of facts and figures. In fact, I might as well actually share it now so that you can have a look. Let me just go back to this and show you. I did, yes. So this article is there. I'll just actually show you if you want to know, if you're interested in looking at the more, high level view. I shared it in chat as well. So you can see a full report. There is a full report attached to that. So you can see from the, the IoMT market growth predicted, even in the EMEA and all across is going to be like, there's a lot of growth expected. They're expecting it to be a $158 billion industry, in 2022. Okay, let me just go back to my slide. Goldman Sachs has also said that IoMT, apart from what's the opportunity, it'll also save the healthcare industry $300 billion annually. How does it do that? By making systems more efficient, by reducing the need for overhead in terms of transportation, making things, and I will describe this a little bit more in the next slide. So just have a look with that. One important term to remind, which we've used in past workshop, are smart connected products. So smart connected products are that is something that ThingWorx uses a lot of terminology. All the products that you see, when they are participating in the Internet of Things, they are called smart connected products. So those could range from wearables with sensors, simple things like your Fitbits could be, part of the Internet of Medical Things, or more advanced sensors are there also, to the large machines in the hospital, like your, expensive MRI machines. In fact, the use case we'll show you today are the MRI machines, but that's just something to keep in mind. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of some of the uses of the Internet of Medical Things. This is by no means exhaustive, but it will give you an idea of how it's transforming things. One very important thing that has been, of course, we've seen during COVID, emergency care is so important. The efficiency of emergency care. Our hospitals are getting overwhelmed and they don't have, are not able to cope with not just like COVID cases, but even other cases, so it's very important to optimize emergency care so that it is super efficient and so that is. I'll give you an example. So if you have when patients come in, you could have RFID trackers that are put in there that mark what every step of the way, so that you don't lose them in the system. Even hospital beds, or ventilators or equipment could be tagged with RFID chips, which would then be communicated not just within the hospital, but it could be communicated even to the EMTs, the emergency people who have the transports, because they could know in advance what facilities are available at a hospital before they come in. So they could see that every respirator in this hospital has been used up. Every ventilator there's no space, there are no beds. So maybe en route itself, they could communicate, get some details and read out to a different hospital. So it's very important to do this. They could even track, say, blood supply types. They could say there is no type A blood or AB blood in this hospital, find another hospital. All of this could be done en route, and that makes the emergency care a lot more efficient, and that's what will save lives also. Like I said, IoT wristbands could be there, could track patients with the journey. It could give you analytics to improve over time, and you could even monitor things like blood pressure, pulse, temperature live. So you get real-time data. So that's the important part. The second point is very important. Connect stakeholders in the healthcare ecosystem in real time. And that's a very important part of that. Health insurance will also be helped. Health insurance, there's a lot of wastage, of course, because there's so much of data slips through the cracks. So by using this, patient data from wearables could be there. It could tailor healthcare processes to the specific patients so that you could accurately determine risks also, and not do wasteful things. It permits telemedicine. Telemedicine has become big during the pandemic, and it is even if we see the pandemic die down a bit, telemedicine still seems here to stay. And tying up telemedicine with insurance is very important. And for that, your IoT will be very useful when you have remote healthcare taking place. Pharmacy quality control is a very important one. The pharma, and this could also involve things like blockchain. The way pharmacy stock and availability is handled, as well as manufacturing processes. They could be documented better. Quality standards could be mentioned. You could have checks in between that prevent, things like the wrong person doesn't get the wrong medicine. At the same time, the medicine is not used after it's like best used by day. It's not defective stuff is not being used, and patients can give direct feedback. They don't have to wait till their next doctor's visit. They could be giving live feedback in different things. There's also something called smart pills now, which are coming in, which is the next level. It's like very futuristic, where people could ingest smart pills that have some tracking information, and then doctors could keep track of how the patient is doing. Are they taking the medicine on time? Is the medicine having an effect? How does it relate to other data? So all of these things could come by with data. And if you use blockchain or something, even claims processing could be faster. So again, tying into insurance. One of the big things that, PTC also stresses on is remote servicing. A lot of time is wasted by people going in the field to fix devices, and it only happens once. It's not preventive. So it's after a machine fails, it goes offline, and somebody has to. With using IoMT, you can be like continuously monitoring, proactively fixing, as well as servicing it remotely. The person does not have to go to a field trip. I could be servicing it from the UAE for a machine that's in India. So there's a lot of things you can do with that as well. Of course, all of this operates within the regulatory framework, so that's important too. And IoMT enables that also, because the regulators also have data accuracy is improved. The feedback loop is more complete. Usually your patient visits a doctor, the doctor prescribes the patient, but then the patient is on their own after that until they come back to the doctor, which they might not do for a variety of reasons. This way, with IoMT, your doctor can be like continuously monitoring. He could have people that are monitoring. The data could be logged continuously, and the patient outcomes as a result are very important. So the COVID impact has supercharged IoMT. One big reason, as I mentioned, was because healthcare has moved to the home. There's telehealth. People are doing telemedicine. They don't want to go to hospitals, for other ailments. So telemedicine is a big thing that's come up there. It's also important that it plugs in with artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is going to be a big thing for analyzing this data. And of course, we've seen in the previous thing that ThingWorx also has artificial intelligence built in. One example that I was really interested in, which is relative to COVID, is how IIT Kanpur, which is a big university in India, and a technical university, partnered to create a startup that made an IoMT-based ventilator. So the key thing about this ventilator could be placed in a remote location, and it could be controlled remotely. So, even if somebody is not there to be like, if you don't have your medical staff, somebody could come and access the ventilator. And these are the kind of ideas that are coming up a lot with the Internet of Medical Things. So you have to see that. Before I go on to the rest of the thing, I just want to stress the number one priority is patient outcomes. And that's where the regulatory framework is also important. The main thing is to improve patients' lives. It's not just to, of course, there's an opportunity and everything. And for that, that's why you have to be operating within the regulatory framework. You have to see licensed and approved solutions under IoMT. The license will be also down to what kind of service, even devices happen to that. And this compliance is a big part that can be built into platforms like ThingWorx. And the regulators can also sign in with there. So the suppliers may also operate, not rather than just the administrator. The suppliers themselves who make these devices will also operate as if they are regulated. So it provides better patient outcomes by making sure everything is in that. So yeah, just remember that these companies are always about serving patients, and that's why you'll see most medical device manufacturers are heavily regulated themselves. With people with the FDA in the US, the EU MDR in Europe. So you have to be thinking about that. There are a few differences you have to consider between a medical device and a pharmaceutical product, although people might think they overlap. But the smart connected medical devices also have, they're regulated differently. So that is something to keep in mind also. I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but they are heavily regulated as well. They should be, and they should be licensed and approved. So if you're working in this field, you have to make sure that you're working in some place where it can be audited, and you have to keep auditing of these to be, considered in that. Okay, just last few explanatory slides, and then we'll get into the hands-in part. This is just a little bit of the life cycle. It kind of builds into, we've talked about in the past, the ThingWorx process, how you first model the data in a logical manner. Then you connect the device, which is the edge device, so that it is feeding data to the cloud, to your model. So similarly, in this way, you connect the device, connect to the medical device, you collect the data, and you rapidly integrate system data as well. So system data could be existing things from your ERPs, your patient record system, the right data, privilege, not without overlapping with privileged data. And then you can monitor in real time and do all sorts of analytics and build up visual tools, which we will do all of this for our particular use case. So this is just an overview, so do have a look at that. Relating to PTC, and this is my last slide on this before you get into hands into, it's important. This is just to stress how important PTC has been to the industry, and how important, how impactful ThingWorx has been. So these are the top 10 medical devices as reported by ProClinical, medical device companies in 2020. And you can see, like in PTC, I got the slide from PTC, obviously, 8 of the 10 companies are already existing customers of PTC. So they are already buying into this. I mean, these, of course, we talk about medical devices, not necessarily just IoMT devices, but they are looking for this. So it's a very important thing. You can see the year-on-year growth also is quite visible there. So this is going to be our use case. So this is going to be the hands-on part. We are going to focus in and on this scenario. So we're going to imagine that our company manufactures MRI devices. Okay, so you can see a picture of an MRI device, but they come in all shapes and sizes. So the MRI device, this is based on an example that you can find on developer.thingworx.com. So MRI devices contain lots of different things. It's not just one device as such, when we think about it. In our case, we are going to boil down, we're going to assume there are two subsystems, two connected subsystems in each device. One is an embedded controller, which could be something as simple as a PLC or even like, if you wanted to do it, a prototype version, we could do it with a Raspberry Pi. The embedded controller is connected to the internet, but it monitors the hardware elements. So things like the MRI, of course, is a highly technical device. So it runs with magnets. So, it monitors our embedded controller with monitor magnet strength and the magnet temperature. And it'll proactively see if these are going outside a range. And coolant is also a very important thing. So it could be that, the coolant itself is like, would give us an idea about whether the machine is about to fail. So that's the first device that we have. The second one that we're going to look at is just a standard Windows PC, which controls the MRI. You would have seen these, they run software bases, and they're also connected to, the challenge here is they're also connected to patient records. But at the same time, you don't want necessarily patient records coming onto the cloud so that you can segregate your data. But all the non-privileged data about that PC, it could be as simple as like, something like, how much RAM the PC has. Is it running properly? Because of course, this is a highly intensive process. So the RAM in the PC, how much disk space is left, how many scans it's done, has it been doing enough scans? Like, has it been practiced? Like, is somebody doing a better job than the other? So all the records are there. So this Windows PC is our second device. Okay, you do not want these subsystems necessarily to speak to each other. So I don't want my embedded controller and my Windows PC necessarily talking to each other and sharing data, because that doesn't make sense. What we want is that they should work together. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to replicate on the cloud. They're going to communicate data to the cloud, which will be twinned on the cloud in a single logical thing. And this will make sense later. So there'll be a single logical thing which comes from two edge things, which come from this, which are from these two devices. So that's the basic thing about the MRI that we need. We just look at like, the other scenario that we want to see is your company maintains a preventive service contract. This is a key thing, which is a very big upsell. The old way used to be that if you had a machine breakdown, the technician comes in to fix, and that could relate to downtime. It could be much more expensive because the machine has broken down, like in totality. It's not like preventive, you've not seen before. And in the new way, you can be monitoring the machine continuously, and you can predict even that it might be about to break down, and you can fix it in a less expensive manner and without having to come there. So the failure is predicted and avoided. So that's important thing. And this works into the business part of it also, because people could work in service contracts for that. So, okay, just coming back to our setup. Sorry, I'm just taking a look at a few different things. So ThingWorx combines the relevant data from both into a single logical view. So we're going to create one thing which combines data from these two edge devices, okay, our embedded controller and our PC. So just remember that for now. Of course, like I said, from the PC, we're only going to take relevant data. We're not going to access things that are, might be like violating people's rights. You just want to segregate all that. So, privacy rights rather. So you want to get only the non-protected data. So we're assuming only non-protected data is going to come in there. Okay, before we start accessing, so we've given you all the links. So everyone here, I think, would have access to this. Does anyone not have access, has not received a username and login? So please do message Amar on the chat, and he will give you a temporary login for now. The rest of you who have already got a login and details, you can definitely navigate directly to that link. I just want to remind you of a few rules on here. When we're using that, we are working all on the same system. You need to use a prefix or a suffix for anything you create. Otherwise, it will not allow you to do that. So if I'm creating something called, say, MRI thing should be MRI thing underscore your initials or your name or something. Otherwise, it will not allow you to create. So since we're working all in the same sandbox, you can create different things, but you should make sure that you create all that. Don't edit or modify objects created by others. This is just a sandbox, so we're not really regulating that. There are ways to do that, but we're not going to go into that. You can set permissions to everything in ThingWorx, which is one of the great things, but we're not going to do that here because it's a sandbox. You're going to be creating some data on the server, but don't count on it persisting continuously. I'll try to keep it on as long as possible, but we might have to do reboots because we're going to use the same server from time to time. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm just going to go back. I'm just going to stop sharing quickly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is now I'm going to just bring up my machine. Just give me 1 second and I will just get set up. Okay, I'm going to just let me make sure that I am logged in still. I was logged in before, but I have oh, let me just share my screen before I do anything else. Yeah, so Amar, you would see the messages there from Nidhin to provide a username and password. Could you just send him a direct message, Amar, please? So just, okay. I'm going to share my screen now, so then you can definitely see what we're doing. That, where is my, yeah, okay. So if you browse to that, you should also be getting this same screen. So I'm going to be logging in as admin. So like I said, ThingWorx has a very strong, permissions model, and I've created in such a way so that our user group has access to everything within a certain, like thing. It is a multi-tenanted system. So there are other projects from other people that will exist on the same system, but you won't even see them, and you definitely won't be able to edit them. But as administrator, I can definitely see that. So you might see some objects that I can see, but you might not be able to see. Okay, so this is ThingWorx Composer. We've used this many times before, and I'm sure some of you will still be one thing. By the way, like, you can definitely have a look at, I was just going to show you the, oh, sorry, I clicked on that. I just want to open that up. If you want to see the last time's workshop where we worked with the analytics, also from the same interface, that's there as well. I'm just, in fact, yeah, you can just navigate to it from our site. Let me just go back to our workshop. Okay, so like I said, we're going to keep a very simple data inquiry here. The first thing I want you to do, just make sure is like, so there are a few different things. So these are objects. So ThingWorx, the main item that you want to look at, the main entities that are important for us are things. So things are logical representations of devices. So we're going to have a thing for the embedded controller, as well as a thing for the PC that is connecting to the system. In previous workshops, we've shown you how to connect these edge devices physically. So we had a Raspberry Pi that was running this, and it was filtering real-time data from the edge onto the cloud. In this case, we're not going to do that step. We're not going to show connectivity because we don't have the time for that. but we're just going to simulate the data coming in to the cloud in a twin of what's happening from the edge. But if you're interested in seeing how you can run an EMS and all, we've done a previous workshop talking about edge connectivity. You can do exactly the same thing with a Raspberry Pi. And in this case, we'll just simulate the data and just like have dummy values on that. So also for the objects, and I only need to do this centrally here. You don't need to copy that. So I'm going to import some preset data. ThingWorx makes it a lot easier to, I'm just going to get a few. So I have a file. So TWX for ThingWorx. This contains a few objects that we will be using. Once I import this, you will all have access to this. So you don't need to also import this. So don't worry about that. I just wanted to show you the process. Importing in ThingWorx is really fast. I mean, this is just like a few text items. And then if you go back to a list of our items, so you can always see entities. If you just click on all, you can browse through all entities by time. So you can see a few extra things have been created. And these are relating to, so MDST is the prefix we're using everywhere. That I'm just sticking with what they've got on developer.ThingWorx. So embedded thing is our twin thing, where the data is expected to come in from the edge. The other thing that we want to see is the PC thing. Now, the PC thing are two specific. These are basically these are simulating edge things that have been twinned onto the cloud. And we've also added a timer there, so it is populating data with that. So these are the two things. In fact, let's take a look at the two logical things. So if you look at embedded thing, so this is a thing, like, I mean, all things, we've seen this many times before. Things are on that. One thing I am going to do is I want to keep the, and this is something I'd recommend you do also. If you go to plus, you should set the project context to assembly project. This is just a logical way of doing things. I've added permissions for that. So just make sure you set this. Then every object that you create will belong to this project, and you'll be able to view it in that. It makes things a lot easier you can then go to project view. So I've got assembly projects, and you can see all the things that have been created. I've not created anything yet, but I'm going to switch this over. This has gone to the PTC default project. I'm going to change it to everything is autocomplete. So you can just do that and just save that. And now I'll do the same thing for the PC thing. Again, this is just a logical thing. It won't change how it functions, but it will affect how organized we are on that. So now if we go back to the project view, in fact, I'm going to close this. I had another project open, and I just hit refresh. You'll see the two things have been added to the project. This is just a logical view, and concrete timer and concrete data things we used for the last workshop, so ignore those. I'm just keeping this thing here. Now, just coming back to these things. So these things are going to be, these two things are acting as twins of your edge devices. So these are the logical receivers. So what's going to happen is that data that comes from your edge things are going to be fed into properties and alerts in MDST embedded things, and things that come from the PC are going to go into MDST_PC thing. So if you look at the properties and alerts, those show you the thing. So we talked about these three properties coming in: coolant percent, field strength, magnet temperature. So you can see it's in Tesla, it's in percent, and it's in degrees Celsius. You'll also notice that the values are refreshing. So you can see the values here. So they are refreshing. The reason for this is because these properties have been set up. You would have noticed a few other things called timers. So we set up a timer. Timer is another type of thing which just generates events every 30 seconds. So what we do is, like, we create a subscription to the timer. So if you look at subscription here, so this is a bit of code. Like, if you edit it, you can see. So this is a bit of code that just computes. It just randomly generates. So it takes a math random function, just generates a value. And this is subscribed. This event is bound to the timer click. So every time the timer runs, which is a global timer, and you can have separate timers for each thing, so like we do in this case. So every time the timer runs, it has a MSD as you can see the subscription info. It runs. So the entity is the MDST timer, which is created. It's just a timer. It's just a thing with the template timer. So every time this runs, you can, it will run this function. So this is all pure JavaScript. So it is just populating the values of coolant percent, field strength, and magnet temperature. And it's doing a few checks there. If it's less than this, just add this. So just to vary it about. So this is just doing this. So we don't need to modify this, but this is running, and that is why you can see these values modifying. So this is simulating if you were actually connected to an edge device and the edge device was pushing these values onto this cloud thing. The same way with PC thing, if we look at it, PC thing also has the same properties. Of course, a PC thing could have a lot more properties, but we just kept it as simple as the number of total scans. So if you look at this is an aggregate since the last reset. Okay, so when we change the property, it will reset to 0. But this is counting the number of scans. So every time an operator does a scan, it'll up this number. The SSD space open is again the number of the amount of space left on that, and the unused RAM is again. So this is purely computing standards, but which are important. It tells us, like, if you, for example, see, this will also give us some data. If you see the number of scans, based on that, you can calculate from the other thing how much refrigerant or coolant should be used. So if coolant levels are coming down to a certain level, but it doesn't tally with the number of scans, we know something is wrong. So the same way, it could tell us that there's a leak based on that. It could also tell us, if SSD space is getting filled up, we know that the machine needs to be upgraded. So this can be preventive rather than it hitting things like in that. So if you see refresh, these properties are also increasing, and they're increasing, like the tally is there. Again, there's a subscription to a different timer, which is done there, and you can always create a timer thing. So you can see MDSD PC timer is the entity. If you see that, this has only got, like, it's a simple thing that just has a base thing template as timer. Everything, as we remember, has to have a template. So normally we say generic thing, which gives it no function, but it's like an inheritance model. So the base thing template here is timer, and timer actually runs has an update rate. So that means that it's 1,000 milliseconds. So every second, it is sending out an event, which is being caught by the subscriptions of different things it could be. So you don't need to do anything with this. This is just to give you an idea. I can see somebody's editing it, but that doesn't matter. You do not need to edit this PC thing. I'm not going to override. Obviously, you just have to look at it. You don't have to edit this. This is just for value. And if you go to this and you see and you keep refreshing, so this is the complete. Okay, great. Okay, so this is just our simulators. This is just going to give us a route for this. But remember, we said we want one single logical thing, which combines the info from these two edge things. Okay, so these edge things are connected to the directly to devices on the edge. So we don't want to necessarily tamper with these or embed that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new logical thing that represents the the MRI as a whole. I'll just do that from here. There are many different ways you can create a new thing. You can go to plus and do that. Make sure the project context is set. And then you just go to thing. And I'm just going to call it, just thinking, we'll use the same prefix. So MDSD. Sorry, just 1 second. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to create the thing, but we'll do that later. I'll come back to this. What you want to do is, and we will come back to this, so you can keep this open until you hit save. Nothing gets done. It says to do name is required, thing template is required. So without those two pieces of information, you can't save the thing. We'll leave it open and we'll come back to it. What I want to explain is something new that we're going to use called an info table. So if you look at the data types, okay. Under here, there are lots of different modeling types. Modeling is what we're doing right now. That's the term for what we're doing. What we've got that. When we create a web application later on, that's called a mashup. So these are the two things to them. So under this, we want to look at the different data storage aspects to there. So there is something called an info table. And I'm just trying to find that. An info table is a data type. So it won't actually be here. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to come back to this. Yeah. So what I want to do is I want to create, like, rather than storing all my values, so like you saw in the PC thing and the embedded thing, I've got separate properties for each of these values, right? But this could change. I might want to add more fields. So what I'm going to do is, instead of doing that, my property here, I'm only going to use one property, which is going to be an info table. An info table is exactly what it says. It's a table. So it's a collection of records. So each row of my table, my info table, is going to contain fields for coolant. It's going to contain fields for field strength, magnet temperature, as well as the PC definition, which is the number of scans, SSD space open, and the unused RAM. So for this, I'm going to use an info table. But the info table, before I can create an info table, I need to define a shape for that. So I'm going to create something called a data shape. Okay, and it's very important that you don't get confused by these two terms. You'll see here, there are things called thing shapes. This is not what we're going to be using. Okay, thing shapes and thing templates we've used in the past. Thing templates and thing shapes are basic, like, templatized versions of things. So when I want to create, if I want to create logical items, logical things that model cars. So supposing when I had a fleet tracking example, I wanted to create like, 5 cars. Okay, which all have the same properties. They all have speed or something like that. I would use thing templates and thing shapes to define that at once, and then I would just create 5 things that derive from that. So rather than defining, the property speed every time, I would define the thing properties in the shape or in the thing template, and then bring that. The difference between templates and shapes is that templates can only be one thing template for a thing, but they can be multiple thing shapes. So think of it as like if you are programmers, you would be used to the inheritance model. So I'm just checking the thing. Okay, so you would be used to the inheritance model. So just think of it as an abstract base class. So a thing shape is an abstract base class. So you would be defining behaviors like any vehicle could be that. You could have, the vehicle could be, it might be a truck or a car. A truck and a car might have different variables, like a car might not have a load variable. A truck depends on how much weight it can carry. So that's where they diverge. But the things that are in common can be put into a thing shape and inherited from that. That way, by this inheritance model, you don't have to, customize for each. And then if you just want to change all vehicles, if you have a new property, if you've installed GPS in all vehicles, you can just add one single property in the thing shape and it'll apply to all things. So that's important with that. However, we're not going to use that here. What I want you to concentrate on are data shapes. Okay, data shapes provide a template for info tables. Okay, and that'll make sense once we do that. But first, just follow along with me. I'm going to create a data shape. It's very similar to the process, and you guys can all create your own ones there. But remember to prefix or suffix it with that. Since I'm going to actually I'm going to call it admin, right? Since I'm the admin, I'm just going to create that. Or if you're going to create that, just create it like an NS. I know somebody might have a repeat here. So just remember this, MDST _ data shape _ NS. Make sure you add the thing there. There's nothing else that has to be done there. There's no definition. Since this is going to be defining the structure of a table, we need to give some field definitions. So that is where we do all this. Now this field, this is not only going to contain the items from the PC thing, it's also going to contain the items from the embedded thing. So we need to add all these fields. And please feel free to use the data shape. If you're not following along, you can use the same shape. It's accessible to everyone. So if you're not following, you don't have to create your own. What we want to do is we want to add all the fields that we have there, right? So I'm going to add first, like say, my coolant %. And I'm going to have it as a number. Everything is autocomplete here, so don't worry about that. Oh, I'm just going to move this box out of the way. And then instead of, you can click this. If you click this, it'll finish editing. If you click this, it'll add the field, and it'll plus will allow you to add a second field. So it's just quicker that way. So I'm going to do all the ones, field strength, right? That's also a number. Same way. So you do have some other, you can set ranges and do all sorts of things. We don't need to do that here. Field strength, and then my magnet _ temperature. Again, also a number. Okay, so these are the embedded things. Now I want to do all the stuff for the other ones. So number of scans. Again, also a number data type. And then SSD _ space _ open. So I'm just keeping the same values here. And the last one is unused _ and again a number. So this time I'm going to click the tag button because I'm done. So I've got all my fields here, and it's not saved yet, by the way. You need to save before anything gets done. So you need to save your here. I'm not sure why this button is gone here, but I'm just going to save it. So you saved the item. So our data shape is created. So you can use this item also. If you look at over here under things, okay, it won't be under things, but if you look at under data shapes, it's there, it's created. Okay, so it's there under, so this can be used by others also. So now I'm going to come back to, to my thing. So I'm going to create my thing that we've got that. Oh, sorry, I forgot one more thing on my data shape, and I'm going to modify that. I want to actually add an additional field called a timestamp. Okay, a timestamp will tell me, when this row entry was given. So I want to make sure that, and that will not be a number, that will be a date time. So let's just do that. Yeah, so I've got all the fields I need. I save, and I come back to this. So my thing is going to be called, let's just call it, MDSD underscore MRI, right? Let's just do this. So or let's just, to stick to our thing, let's just call it MRI thing. Okay, so this is a whole overall view which will combine PC thing and embedded thing. Every time you create a new thing, you have to give us a thing template. So I'm just going to give it, when you don't have any specific, like you're not inheriting from timer or anything else or any custom template, you just use generic thing. So generic thing is the template. And doing that, that's it. A thing is created. Okay. Now we haven't defined any properties, but we want to have, remember, we want to have one property, which is our info table. So what I'm going to call it, the MDSD, again, just to keep it like that, info table underscore property, right? And I'm going to give it a base type of info table. Okay. An info table has to have a data shape. And remember, we just created one. So MDSD underscore data shape underscore NS. And another field that I want to do is I'm going to keep it as persistent. So persistent data types, if I edit this thing and it's not marked as persistent, so your table would be reset. So if you added on rows to your table, it would be reset to empty if you modified the thing or you reset the server. Persistent keeps it logged on. So even if I make changes, it will still stay with the value. So I'm going to keep that. That's all I need. I just need one property here, which is going to contain all my things there. I'm just going to save that. Now, what I want to do is also is like, so by the way, one thing that you want to see also is, you can see the binding type here. We've used this. So binding, when you have an edge device coming in, the edge device can be bound here. So if you have like the edge microserver running, you can mention binding here so that it automatically syncs values. So that's a very useful thing. We won't use that here, but just keep that in mind. That's just to remember that. Now, what we want to do next is we want a service play that will grab data from these two things, from MDSD PC thing and MDSD embedded thing, and automatically update the values into our info table. So to do that, we don't want to necessarily be doing it manually every time. We're going to create a service. A service, as you've seen before, is just a function. And we're going to create an aggregation service. And we're just going to call it MDSD aggregation underscore service, right? Everything else can stay as it is. You don't need to define that. Inputs are also, there are no inputs to this. We're just going to run it. And there's no output. These are typical function things. Now, ThingWorx provides a number of snippets. If you don't want to have to, like do coding, this is JavaScript, but it can you can insert snippets directly, if else statements, it'll automatically do it. There is autocomplete also. If you don't feel comfortable with coding, you can take a lot of snippets there. And all the data you're accessible to is also there in this tab. So you've got me, other entities. So for example, if I wanted to get, data from MDSD underscore embedded thing. So I'm just going to put that in. And I'm going to say, I want to call the function. There are lots of I want to call the service, get property values. These are all inbuilt services that are there, built into all this. And so if I just do this, it'll automatically add a line of code which retrieves these values, as a thing. So get property values returns an info table. So it says that, so which is good for me because I can then just directly store it into my my object. So I'm just going to actually, I'm just going to say, change this to something. I'm just going to call it, I'm going to give it a meaningful name, embedded underscore properties. And the same way, I'm just going to take that. So you can see the modification there, for the PC properties. So the same way I want to get a row, I've just copied and pasted with that. Just want to do PC properties instead of MDSD embedded thing. And you have to make sure the name is same. So it's better to use entities there. So this gets the properties, these get the properties back from these two things in individual form as an info table. What I want to do is I want to take these two rows and I want to add them into one single row in our info table. So how I do that is I'm going to, so obviously this is running in, so I'm going to do me is the thing, and it gives you a nice autocomplete if you want to. So I want to modify my info table property and I want to add a row. So, so how do I do that? I add a row. So there's a function called add row. Okay, it's not showing up in autocomplete for some reason. Again, it's JavaScript, so the same format. You need to have open and close brackets. I'm going to add a row. So since it's a row is a record, you want to put it into there. And then I have to define the values. So this is coolant percent will come from embedded underscore properties dot coolant underscore percent, right? So what are my other rows? And again, I should just, I've got this all put into a code snippets file, and I will also paste this so that you can just directly, and you can code this. You need to specify all the other fields. I'm just going to directly paste it, take a shortcut. And I'm going to put this in chat also if you want to copy and paste. Okay, so this is just a simple code that we're going to do. If you look at it, it just gets the properties from the two separate things. So taking it globally, as long as you have permissions, you can access that. And it adds a row to the info table property with each of these. So I'm just going to save this. And then my service is running. Did I? Okay, it's not saved here. So I want to save it once. Once I've done this, and you can create that, you can see the details on there. Wait, I want to make sure I did do yeah. Okay, so so timestamp also comes from date now. So the current time will be written as a timestamp. So I just want to make sure that is also there in the code. Once you've created a service, if you want to test it out, you just hit execute. Okay, execute, it's not going to show any returns. So if you just run it, it's not going to do anything because we've not specified. You can execute it twice. But you'll notice once you do this and you come to your properties and you look at your info table property, so your info table has now got two entries there, which has come because it has been taken from MDST PAC thing and MDST embedded thing and updated here. And you can see the two timestamps. So it was done within about 3 seconds of each other because I clicked it very fast. And there were already some changes there because the timer is running every second. So these values have all automatically been written there. Okay. In the interest, I would suggest again, you create an MDST underscore MRI thing that is not has a suffix so that it doesn't overlap with that. But the good thing here is now we don't need to look at MDST PC thing and embedded thing. We only need to look at this one logical thing when looking at our MRI. So we have now taken out everything on there. So we know our service is working. Okay, but we don't want to execute it from here from Composer. We want to be able to execute it from obviously from a mashup, from a web application. So that's what we're going to do first. Okay. If you go back here, by the way, if you see like I showed you, if you want to see the values, you just click on the pencil icon. Yeah, so you can manually add here also, but you don't want to do that. You'd rather just run the aggregation function and let it fill in. So again, if I go back to my function and I go back to my services and I click execute again. Oh, I've got something obscuring this. If I click execute again, and then I go back, I will have a third row. So you can see my third row is there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create our web application. Okay, this is the part which is, if you've not seen ThingWorx before, this is the best part of ThingWorx for me and the easiest thing. So far, we've used a little bit of JavaScript, but the mashup allows you to, the mashup builder allows you to create a web application without any code at all. Everything is drag and drop, everything is easy to use, and you'll see how to do that. So to do that, again, like with things, there are many ways to create mashups. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go from plus, or I can go from browse if I want to see the individual types. You can also set different permissions so that only your designers see mashups, but only your data designers see modeling. So there are plenty of things you can do with that. Everything is nicely formulated. So you just go to mashups and create plus. You just leave the defaults. You can do some formatting for that. Static and responsive, there's two distinctions are legacy now. All mashups are going to be responsive, so you can just select the ones. Just leave the defaults. Click OK. Again, you have to give your mashup a name. I'm going to give it the similar name. I'm just going to call it mashup_ns, right? By default, because I've set my project context, assembly project is there. So now if I click save, my mashup is created. But you're not really going to do anything on your mashup here. You want to look at your mashup under design. So this is the mashup builder, and I'm going to just minimize this so we can see. The mashup designer is the most important part if you are like creating web applications, and it's one of the best features, like I said, of ThingWorx, and you can definitely find that. So this is my canvas in the center. This is going to be my web page canvas. Is somebody sending me a message? Yeah, no. Okay, so this is my web page, and this is where I want to design. So now you can see the layout on the side. What I'm going to do is like, what I just wanted to see is like, if you got this container, and so you add different widgets to it. So if you click on the widgets tab here, you can see tons of different widgets, and we'll be using these. But I just want to show you that the layout container is where you start from first. I can add different containers, which are just like divs here. So these are containers. I can resize them. I can say that they're responsive. So that means that any item you put inside them will expand to fit the space. So if you're viewing it on a mobile phone, it'll look different. It'll do that. I don't want to bother with that hassle right now. So I'm just going to make my containers static. In fact, I'm not going to add more. You can add more like you do in CMS systems. You can divide it and create that, but I'm just going to delete these. So, okay, I'm actually using cut, but you can just hit the delete button also. You can do cut. You can see all the toolbar. You can do redo, undo. You can see a history of all the items you've done, all the things. So you can go back and forth. There's a lot of things. It's a very sophisticated interface, but I'm just going to keep a simple container, and I'm going to keep static. Okay, static means that my items, any widgets I drop in this are going to be precisely sized, so it will not fill the space of the full container. Okay, it won't be responsive. Ideally, you might want to do responsive, but static is a little easier to manage when we're doing this. Now, I'm going to do one thing extra, which isn't there in the online example. I'm going to add on tabs here. Okay, so tabs are a widget. And by the way, at any time, if you save this and you click on, okay, it doesn't show here, but okay, you click on this. If you click on this, it'll open up the mashup. I mean, this is the web application. It's blank, so you won't see anything. But this is your web mashup. So this is your canvas on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add on tabs here. So tabs are a type of widget, which again, because it is static, and I'm going to make sure actually the tab layout is also static, so that anything I put in there is static. I just want to make sure. So do set that also. Again, you have to save before you do anything. I'm going to actually, my overall layout, I should probably make responsive so that the tabs modify. So now you can see, because I made it responsive, the tabs automatically take the whole space, but the tab containers individually are static. So anything I put into the tab containers are there. Okay, so now if I go back, I don't need to do the view again. I can just hit F5. And again, so this shows you the two different tabs that will be there. And these are completely separate containers. One will be hidden when the other is not there, and you can give them names. So I can give here in the properties. So I have to make sure that the tab is selected. You can do this in Explorer also. This gives you a hierarchical view. Tab set 7 is each individual container, and tab set is the overall one. I can change and you can see the properties there. So you can increase the number of tab names or yeah, so you've got tab name 1 here instead of this. If I want to just say main and analytics, I've not decided what I'm going to put there, but I'm just going to put that. I'm going to just say main grid. Okay, so and then again, make sure you save. It should always be saved, otherwise you lose everything. Now in my main grid, I'm going to actually put in a grid widget. So I go back to my widgets tablet here. Widgets tool here, and I search for grid. You'll see another types of grid. There's tree grid is like a hierarchical view, but I just want to use a regular grid. So you can see also, because it's not responsive, I can resize this grid. It's not taking up all the space, so I can resize it according to how I want. Right, so I'm just going to fill it up there. I'm not going to make it full because I want to leave space for something else. So you can do all this resizing on there. And I also want to put in a button. So I'm going to use another type of widget, which is a button widget. And I'm just going to drop it there. You can place it either this way, or you can even like edit the property for top left. If you want to do like fine changes here, you can do that. This means that this property has been changed. You can reset it. If I hit reset, it'll go back to the top, but I can still drag and drop and set that. Now I want to change the name of the button. So I want to change rather the label. So I'm going to select label, and it gives me the property called label. This can be taken from a field. That's why it's got you can localize it according to different languages. So I'm going to say retrieve MRI statistics. Okay, so this button is what I'm going to use to call my aggregation function. So once I save and I go and refresh, my tab names will have changed and my main grid will have this. So there's nothing in the analytics tab because I've not put in anything, but this one had that. It's just a blank grid though, because I've not bound any data. And this function, this button also does nothing because I've not bound anything to it. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to bind data to this. And this is again, a really good part of the mashup builder, where you can do all this, binding data without any code, writing any code. You can just do it with drag and drop. Now I want to get my data, the main grid should be filled with data that comes from my info table, my one MRI thing. So what I'm going to do in the data is I'm going to add plus, and I'm going to browse to, I'm going to search for my entity. MDSD underscore, what was it? It was MRI thing. Okay. Now MDI, we can't just directly access the thing. We want to use services from there. I'm going to use the same service. There's a built-in service called get properties. Oh, sorry, no, I'm in the wrong, not in the service category. I want to set that here. So get properties, and I'm going to select that. So I want this function to execute on load. So when I load the web page, the first time I want get properties to execute. So I'm going to check that on execute on load. Done. Now, how do I bind what's returned by this? I've got my if I expand that, it returns an info table property, which is my the property that I'm saving on there. I take this and I select on it, like I click on it, and I just drag and drop it to the grid. And the grid will give me a few binding targets. I don't want to put in the footer data. I can even select based on certain items. I just click data. And then you can see when I do that, a binding is shown in this tab is very important also. So it shows that what's returned by get properties, info table property, is bound to grid advanced data. Okay. I'm just going to save just to be safe always. So once I've done this, right, I want to also, I have to specify my data field. So on my grid, so that it knows where, actually, no, it's, if I just do save and I just go back to refresh and we look at it. So now all the data that was stored in my thing, remember we had 3 rows, they are stored in my info, and you can activate different things. You can add a footer, you can see a few different things. So all the data is directly bound. Okay. And it's happening on load. So, every time I reload, it will come back there. So you can do different things. There are like some notes that it gives you some warnings. It says no source bound to footer data. We're not using a footer, so we don't need to worry about that. But sometimes there are important reminders here. So you should look at that. This tab is quite important to see your bindings for data, and done that. Now, what we want to do is also, we have an aggregation function, and we want that to get called every time we click this retrieve MRI statistics button. So what we do is, it's coming from the same thing. So we just go here to MDSD underscore MRI thing, and we click on this add service button. And now my service, instead of getting like a built-in service, I'm going to get the service that I created, which is MDSD underscore aggregation service. But I don't want this to happen automatically on load. I want it to happen only when the button is clicked. So I'm not going to check on execute on load. So what I do is I just click done, and it's done there. So when I do this, there's no return type or anything, so I don't need to do any dragging. I just want that. So again, from my button, if I click on the button and select it, there's a small drop-down list next to it. It gives me a few events that I want to handle the clicked event. Okay, so I'm just going to take the clicked event and just drag and drop it onto MDSD aggregation services. So now if I select MDSD, I can see the binding there. So when the button is clicked, it'll automatically call the aggregation service. So let's see this in practice. If I come back here and I hit F5, sorry. So I've still got this item, but if I click on this button, see what happens. Okay, nothing will happen on the grid right now because I have not clicked it to refresh, but if I hit refresh, you'll see a 4th row. See, so a 4th row has come in there. Okay, a 4th row has been entered based on that. Now, if I click retrieve MRI statistics again, another row will be added where it is syncing up from there. Again, this is not ideal. I can either hit the reload button or the browser one, and I get a 5th row. Now, what I want to do is I don't want to have to go through this process every time of hitting refresh or reload. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a function. Okay, so from this, so we have tested the application. So from this, I want to also do, so there are also post events for each function. So under the aggregation service, I go to the data properties, okay? And there is an event exposed by this aggregation service called service invoke complete. All these properties, all these services have this particular event that triggers every time the service is completed. So what I want to do is when the service is completed, I want you to update my grid. How do I do this? I just simply take service invoke completed and I just drag it and drop it on get properties. So now if you look at get properties will be called twice, once on the mashup load and once when MDST aggregation service is completed. So what is the net effect of that? Let's go and refresh here. So you can see here, my grid, the last item is like right now I've got what, 5 items, right? So 5 items there and the last one is 3.42. But now if I click retrieve MRI statistics, it's automatically added a row and updated my grid. So this way you can set up these complex data flows and complex things that are done there. We've done it in the past where we've used, even for file transfer. So it automatically does it and it's all just drag and drop. So this essentially creates our different things. What I want to do, we pretty much created on this. What I want to do is like, you can see here, right now we're clicking the button and only when we're clicking the button, it's running there. I'm going to add a widget. I'm going to actually, okay. In previous times, I would have added a widget because there's a widget called auto refresh. But now ThingWorx, I think since version 9 has shifted to functions, to functions for the same purpose. So auto refresh is there as a function rather than a widget. So you just have to click this. I want to find an auto refresh. You can also find like confirmation boxes. Lots of things are kept up here. Functions are very useful. I'm just going to call it, MDST underscore AR, auto refresh, auto R, right? That doesn't matter. You can call it anything. Now this executes an event like we saw with the timer, but this only happens when the web page is active. I have to check on auto refresh and I'm not going to do it for 30 seconds. This in seconds, by the way. I'm going to say every 10 seconds, right? So by doing this at every 10 seconds, an auto refresh will be called every 10 seconds on here. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to use the auto refresh to set these values. So rather than clicking on retrieve MRI statistics, you just want it to automatically retrieve the value every 10 seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take again the refresh active thing here, and I'm going to just do, I'm going to just drop it on the aggregation service. Okay. So every time my refresh is called, which is every 10 seconds, aggregation service will be called. So it will automatically update on there. So now when I come back to here, now you'll notice something. Every 10 seconds, I don't have to click the button at all, right? And it's like an AJAX request. So every 10 seconds, the last one is 4.12. And you'll notice after 10 seconds, another item has been added. Similarly, after 10 seconds, you saw a slight refresh there, another row has been added. So we can set this up. The one drawback, of course, is that it's only when the application is active. If you wanted to do it in the backend, you could use a timer object, but it's fine if we can do that. So now, I mean, we've pretty much done the key part of our MRI device. What I want to do is add a few charts so we can see some values, and that's what's going to go into analytics. So I'm going to select my other tab. I'm going to take a timer, time series charts. There are lots of charts that you have here. You can even see by category here. So they're themable, legacy. You want to take all objects. So it'll, again, it's by autocomplete. So you can take, if I just select chart, and in fact, there are some charts that are missing from this version. There's now also a waterfall chart, so there's all sorts of advanced data, but I'm just going to use the time series chart from here and just make sure you use the first one. Again, you just drag and drop. Okay, this is a legacy widget, so I added the wrong one. So I'm going to delete that, just cut it out. And I'm going to use the, the selected widget. I'm going to just create the new time series. Okay, so this is the time series, widget chart. If I go back, And you just see under analytics, it'll have an empty chart, I hope. So this is just an empty chart, but I can go and like I can get, I want to bind the info table from get properties, which has already been created. So I'm just going to drag and drop it here and bind it to the data of time series chart. And there are a few properties that you need to set for the chart. You know, I want to first of all set the x-axis to the timestamp value. So x-axis, my x-axis field. So it automatically fills this because I bound data with all the fields there. So I'm going to fill it with timestamp and just save that. And for my data fields, I'm going to get all the embedded properties. What I want to do is get actually, okay. So the number of fields, like I can only see data fields 1 there, but what I want to see is number of, there is a value where I can say that I want, sorry, number of series. So number of series is by default is only set to 1, but I'm going to set 3 so that we can view all the 3 attributes there. When I do this, and I come back there, I will see instead of just data field 1, there's also data field 2 and data field 3. Again, I just need to select from my info table. So I've got coolant percent, magnet temperature, and I can even use the PC ones, but I don't want to bother with that, and field strength. Now, once I do this, and I just come back here and I refresh, so you can see all the values. This is not ideal, of course, because you know the values are in different units. So you've got, so you can, it's probably better to, you know, separate it out, but you can see it's automatically updating when the values. This is not so clear. It looks like a flat line because the variation is very little. So I'm going to actually get rid of, I'm going to reduce the number of series to just 2 and get rid of the last one, which was, I think the one that was going out here, probably fields, magnet temperature will be in the same. I'll just go to field strength actually. Sorry, I'll just change this over to where is field strength. Yeah, okay. Now if I go back, it will show me more variation. Of course, it's ideal, like, you know, so you can see the values. Before it was just flatlining because it just changed once, but then we were getting like regular updates every 10 seconds. So you can see certain ranges there. Again, this doesn't show much variation, but you can see it's updating on the thing there. So you can customize a lot here. You can use something, there are functions like, there's something like if you've got a big strip, you can add like filters so that it only shows you from certain dates to certain dates. You can modify all that. So, you know, if you select this, it gives you a zoom view. So it gives you an overall view, which you can see. I haven't figured out how to use this, but you can definitely play around with that. So it gives you like a browsable view. So all of these have different things that are like, you know, so you can see particular structures that's there. So it's really useful to do that. If you want to add, like, you know, if you want to add a tab, you can always go back to your tab widget, you know, go to your tab set, make sure you select your tab. And then if you go to your tab set and say, you know, you can add an extra tab. So number of tabs, if you say 3 and, you know, the tab name 3, you know, what's it name? Yeah. So I've got a third tab name. I'll say analytics 2, just to differentiate. So I could go to analytics 2 and I could add a separate, again, you can also copy and paste. Copying and pasting will not bind the data necessarily. So you want to be careful with that. And I could just go here and just paste. So you can see it binds this, but it removes the binding. So you need to bind data again. It will still have the properties will still be set as such. So, oh no, it won't. Data field is reset. So you could maybe do the magnet temperature here. And you can get rid of the number of series. Let's just keep it as 1, right? And now if I go back, so I've got an extra tab which will show me, or did I not bind it properly? That's one of the problems with copying and pasting. You know, you do want to make sure that you've got. I didn't set the x-axis, so I need to set the x-axis field. So I didn't set the x-axis, so that's why I have to set the x-axis field. That was also reset when I copied and pasted. Once I do that, I'll get my second chart, which is showing me for my magnet temperature. So you can, this same way, you can get all these details. Because they're set up on a refresh, it'll automatically update. You can do all sorts of things. You can change the amount of things. You could do waterfall charts here also. So these are all particular things. So this about covers it. I mean, this is what we built, a simple, MRI interface here. We've managed the things we've accomplished so far. We've managed to combine the data. So I'm going to stop sharing this. Feel free to practice with this. Only thing I say is just make sure that you add prefixes, suffixes to your thing types. Feel free to practice. Feel free to practice with your mashups. There's a lot of things you can do. You can set up advanced flows of different data types. I could have also, like, instead of using, we chose to use a logical thing. You could have directly got the properties. I could have added PC thing and got a value on there. So for example, just showing you something quickly that I could have gone and I could have had so the widget that I want actually is something that we've used a lot. I'm just going to look up. You can see there's a standard widget called which is the one that I wanted to say. So you can see there are lots of different ones. So you can have sliders. You can have numeric display values. So you could do a value display, and that could be taken from if I, instead of MRI thing, if I go and I add embedded PC thing. Oh, sorry, not here. So I could add embedded thing, and I could say, use the get properties, get property values. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but you could definitely, you could just bind from individual property values. Also, you'd see the return data, all data, it's got, say, coolant percent, right, which gives you the current one. So I could just bind it like this and say, this is my data. And then if I come back here and I just refresh this, my chart will be gone now, and it'll be replaced by the value there. So you can pretty it up. You can add, CSS, it'll be getting the value. I've not bound it to the reload, so it is not auto refreshing, but the value is changing. So you can see different things on there. So yeah, so that about covers it for us. This is everything we wanted to show you. And you can, of course, like I said, view the session back on the Assembly website. Everything is there. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm just going to bring back a screen. Did we have any more slides to go? I don't think so. So yeah, so that was our last slide. So yeah, just nothing further ado. I just wanted to thank all of you for your time. I hope you've learned something. Please do practice with the system. We've been waiting a long time to get this virtual machine active, set up for everyone to use. And it's a great opportunity to use enterprise software for free. So please do practice on this. You can see there's a lot of content that you can follow in developer.ThingWorx. So you can definitely do that. Please do send us your feedback also. And yeah, that's about it from my side. Until next time, this is me, Nikhil, signing off. So we'll catch you on